Alright guys, welcome back to some more of When They Cry. We just got hit with the emotional parts of the chapter so far, and when it hits hard because Battler, Jessica, and even George lost someone very important to them. With Battler, it was his family. With Jessica, it was her father. And with George, it was Shannon. And I wasn't expecting Shannon to die. I was expecting pretty much the main family to go, but I didn't expect the maid, who had nothing to do with the situation other than just working for the family, would go as well. So we're gonna continue from where we left off, guys, and if anything else, hope you all continue to enjoy. Let's get right on to it. Alright everyone, welcome back. Let's get started.
お待ちなさいよ。ここは犯行現場なんでしょ？なら変に手を加えちゃダメよ。私たちは混乱してて現場に土足で踏み入っちゃったけど、それはきっと警察の捜査の邪魔になったわよ。
Natsuhi glared at Ava testily. Objectively speaking, Ava was right. Even so, she glared at Ava as though accusing her for refusing to do those tragic corpses, which had been humiliated even after death, the simple kindness of covering their faces. However, Ava had spoken both calmly and correctly. This horrible state was definitely not an accident. It was a crime. Someone had killed them. It was a murder case. In that case, they should be careful not to further disturb the site. They had to aid the police as much as possible so that they might hand over a clue that could be used to find the detestable culprit.
私もエヴァさんに賛成ですな。警察が来るまでここは手つかずにしておくべきです。
奥様、いかがなさいますか？
そうですね。わかりました。ここを閉ざしなさい。それから念のためここに別の施錠をするように。
別の施錠？
ええ。ここに来た時、シャッターの鍵は閉じていました。ということは、シャッターの鍵を使い、犯人が施錠したということです。
確かに通りや。じゃあここを開けた限り、犯人の指紋が残ってるんとちゃうんか。
警察に証拠として提出する価値はあるでしょうけど、カノン君が普通に持ってここを開けるのに使用しちゃったわ。多分カノン君の指紋も付着しちゃってるわよ。そしてその鍵はさっき源氏さんに手渡され、源氏さんも素手で受け取ってる。大した証拠にはなりそうにないわね。
それは不用心でした。申し訳ございません。
源氏さん、この倉庫の鍵は他にもあるんか？
いいえ、この一つだけです。
ということは、犯人はその鍵を使用人室から持ち出し、そして律儀に元の場所に戻したちゅうことになるな。
See, I highly doubt it was any of the servants. They may not like the family, the core family that much, but they wouldn't go to all the trouble to do this because they even accepted their fate as furniture, as they call themselves. And also, we all know it has something to do with Beatrice at the very least. And I'm still looking forward to her showing up sooner or later. Hideyoshi's theory sounded plausible, but was actually very strange if you thought about it. Why would they go to all the trouble for returning a key they stole? No, if you think about it even more deeply, there are some even more bizarre points. Usually, when a criminal hides a body, they are trying to delay the point at which it will be found and use that time to escape. The actual place where the six were killed wasn't necessarily here, but they had been killed somewhere on this island. And it would be normal to think that the reason they had been carried to this storehouse was to hide the bodies and delay the discovery of the crime. But that graffiti drawn on the shutter that looked like an eerie magic circle had eloquently indicated that the corpses were hidden here. It didn't specifically say that they were here, but after 6 people had gone missing, by making such an obvious scribble and even returning the key to open it, it seemed almost as though someone had wanted the corpses to be discovered here.
とにかく秀
一度は犯人が開け閉めをした施錠だけでは信用できません。犯人の手からもこの場所を保護する意味で施錠を新たにしたいと言っているのです。
いい案だと思います。私も賛成です。
Genji fished around inside the storehouse and unsealed a brand new padlock which had been inside a small box.
鍵はどうなさいますか？
私が持ちましょう。責任を持って警察に手渡します。
Natsuhi took the key to the padlock from Genji's hand. After that, they all exited and lowered the shutter. Because of that, the corpses were once again sealed behind the shutter, covered with that gruesome magic circle. Genji crouched down in front of the shutter to fasten the new padlock. In addition to the main lock on the shutter, there is sometimes a place where you can attach your own lock in front of it. This was one of those types. In the midst of the roar of the thunder and the pouring rain, the storehouse stood there ominously. On its closed shutter was the magic circle, drawn in a creepy blood-like substance, and swallowing up the bodies of 6 whole people. To Natsuhi, putting the new lock on may not have been entirely to preserve the scene for the police, but rather, she might have felt like she wanted to shut them out for all eternity, to prevent any more victims from being swallowed by that eerie demon.
さあ、行きましょう、南條先生。ご足労をありがとうございました。源氏は急いで警察に連絡を。
戻りましたらすぐに連絡します。
The adults left the storehouse. The ghastly magic circle drawn on that shutter, still swallowing the 6 bodies, loomed eerily, occasionally lit up by the lightning. See, now that makes sense to have the glass shatter. No, it's barely 9. Curtain rise in tragedy. All that could be heard was the sound of the rain, the voices from the kids' television program that Maria was watching, and the engrossed Maria's cackling voice. In other words, what greeted them as they returned dumbfounded from that horrible, bizarre scene was the voice of Maria as she rolled around laughing at the television. Not knowing how to explain to Maria that her mother, Rosa, was dead, those who returned to the room couldn't manage any more than a suffocating silence. At first, Maria returned their stares with a dubious look. But when she realized that they weren't trying to blame her for anything, she ignored them and again immersed herself in the television program. The children wordlessly sat down on the sofa. Their minds were probably blank from their state of shock. Though they had all cried and mourned so much, now they just vaguely sat there, their faces expressionless. Only Kanon had returned to his usual calm expression. However, that probably didn't mean he had been able to wipe out the shock. Nothing was reflected in his eyes as he stared into the emptiness. Hideyoshi, fidgeting as he remembered that horrible scene, kept muttering, "Unbelievable. That can't be something of this world. It's the work of the devil." Every once in a while, he turned these into questions and bounced them off Nanjo. But Nanjo, in a calm, doctorly manner, kept repeating that nothing could be understood by only glancing at the scene, and that until the police arrived, he wouldn't know anything. However, Nanjo only appeared calm by comparison to Hideyoshi, who could not contain his agitation and fear. In fact, Nanjo had also received a huge shock, and his face was deathly pale. Maybe it was because of their attitudes that Natsuhi tried to rise to the challenge and take control. Natsuhi was apparently unchanged from her normal attitude, and she briskly gave directions.
私はお父様のところへ行ってきます。源氏は急ぎ警察へ連絡を。
かしこまりました。
私も一緒させていただいていいかしら、夏日姉さん。クラウス兄さんがいなくなった以上、お父様の補佐は私の仕事だもの。その私が夏日姉さんに任せっきりで、ここでくつろいでいるわけにはいかないわ。
Natsuhi was struck speechless by Ava's aggressive actions in a situation like this. It seemed that she was claiming that with Kraus dead, the one to take responsibility should not be his wife, but herself, the next highly ranked in the family. Possibly she was not happy that Natsuhi was ignoring her and handling matters herself in this extreme situation. Of course, even Ava's mind had been blank from the shock until just now. She only returned to herself after Natsuhi started giving orders.
お好きになさるといいでしょう。
Natsuhi walked out without saying anything more. Ava followed behind her. Mere moments after they left, Kumasawa ran into the parlor. Since she wasn't the kind of person to run around, it would be normal to sense that something had happened. But since everyone had been stricken by that earlier shock, none of them took any notice of this trivial difference.
奥様夏日姉さんならお父さんのところへ行ったで。すぐ戻ってくるやろ。どないしたんや、熊沢さん。
それが食堂に血が。
In the dining hall too? Everyone in the parlor turned to listen. Everyone thought the same thing. I hope I misheard that. Just like how any container has a limit to how much you can put in it. No one felt like they could accept any more tragedies beyond what had already happened. So they all thought. I hope I misheard that.
なんやて？食堂？
朝食の準備に食堂に配膳に行ったら。
The first to start running was George. His harsh footsteps jogged Hideyoshi and Nanja to their senses, and they chased after him. Battler and the others followed. They flew into the dining hall one after another, but they didn't find any change that would have caused Kumasawa to go pale. To those who had viewed the gruesome scene in the storehouse, it was a bit of an anticlimax. However, Kumasawa, who had followed them, pointed it out. There really were some traces of blood on the floor. Compared to that terrible scene, it was not very dramatic. However, if you calmly thought about it, this definitely indicated the loss of a lot of blood.
ここにも血だまりがあるよ。これは一体。
だいぶ時間が経っているように見えますな。おそらく昨べここで殺されたんだと見ていいでしょ
う。そういうことになるんやろな。わしらは昨べずっと食堂で話し合いをしとった。そしてここに何者かが押し入ったに違いない。
父さんたちが打ち合わせを抜けて休んだのは何時だっけ？
昨夜の24時を少し過ぎたくらいの頃や。だからその後にと考えるんが妥当やろな。
マジかよ。勘弁してくれよ。お嬢様、しっかり。
俺はもうさっきの倉庫でこの世の地獄ってやつを拝んじまったから。
そうかよ。よかったな。私は頭がどうにかなっちまいそうだぜ。ここは食堂だぜ。私は毎日ここで食事をして、学校のことをぼやいたり、宿題のことをぼやいたり、親父に学校の成績の話をされたり、そういうところなんだぜ。お嬢様、これ以上ここにいるのはよくありません。100万へ戻りましょう。
俺も同感さ。秀吉おじさん、この部屋は多分警察にとって重要な意味があると思います。俺たちが踏み荒らしちまうのはまずいんじゃないですか。
Battler proposed this in a slightly powerful voice as together with Kanon, he grabbed the pale and shaking Jessica's shoulders.
バトラさんの言う通りですな。この部屋にこれ以上好んで居続けることはありますまい。
Nanjo spoke while looking at the pale faces all around. Even though that horrible scene in the storehouse had felt like something not of this world, at least it was in a place far from here, a place we had been able to cut ourselves off and run away from, which had helped everyone to keep on going. However, this dining hall was different. It was in the mansion's main wing, and as Jessica had said, it was supposed to be one of the more relaxing places within the mansion. It was the same place where all the relatives had enjoyed lunch and dinner yesterday. The shock of seeing this place smeared with blood reminded us of that horrible spectacle in the storehouse, and forced us to accept that we really hadn't been able to run away from the scene of that tragedy.
わしも同感や。この部屋には犯人の痕跡が残ってるかもわからんしな。 素人のわしらがかき回すべきとちゃうで。はよ出るんや。はよはよ。
Hideyoshi also understood the meaning of what Battler had said and pushed everyone to hurry out of the dining hall. The way we were then, looking at the blood any longer would have been too harsh. Nobody went against his words. Everyone raced each other out of the dining hall, almost as though the last person in the room would be trapped in there, all alone. Once in the hallway, we lent a shoulder to Kumasawa, who was leaning against the wall, still trembling, and we all headed back to the parlor together. Then, Genji returned.
おお、源氏さん。警察に連絡はつきましたか？
それが申し訳ございません。無線機の故障か、それ以外の理由によるものかわかりませんが。
なんや、警察に連絡がつかんのか。電話も無線もどっちもダメなんか。
申し訳ございません。月曜の朝に船が来ることになっていますので、その船の通信機を借りることができると思います。
この島には船はないんか。新島の警察署までちょっくら行ってくることはできんのか。
秀吉さん、この天気では無理だ。少なくとも台風が通り過ぎるまではどうにもなりません。
クラウス様のボートは今修理中で島にございません。ですので月曜の船を待つほかないかと。
そんなアホな話があるか。6人も死んだんやで。そして電話も無線も通じず船もない。台風が過ぎて船が来るまで、つまり明日の朝までわしらは警察にも連絡できず、この島におれっちゅうことなんか。
ってことはつまり俺たちだけじゃなくおじさんたちを殺した犯人もこの島から出られず
そういうことになるね。みんなを殺した犯人はまだこの島にいる。
親父たちを殺した奴はこの島から逃げ出せずまだ潜んでやがるってことかよ。くそ見つけ出してやるぜ。警察になんか引き渡すもんか。私がこの手でやっ先にしてやる。
Maria had finally realized that something was odd in the parlor. Or rather than noticing something odd. It was probably better to say that she felt unhappy and neglected since everyone was getting so excited about something only she didn't know about.
ジェシカお姉ちゃん、誰か死んじゃったの？
The way she spoke was completely calm. Just as though she was talking about characters in a TV drama, as though it didn't affect her at all. Jessica probably didn't like that. As though trying to say, can't you tell just by looking at me, overwhelmed with grief, she flared up against Maria.
死んじまったぜ。みんな私の親父もパトラの父さんと母さんも
Uh-oh.
幸田さんもシャノンも
Someone shut her mouth.
そしてマリアの母さんも。
よすんだジェシカちゃん。悲しいのは君だけじゃない。
マリアさん、ショックだろうが聞いてください。あなたのお母さんがな、死んでしまいました。
ママが死んじゃった？
ああ。誰かに殺されちまった。悲しいだろうがよ。心をしっかり。
何人死んじゃった？
6人だぜ。6人だ。くそあんな残酷なことしやがって。踊ってもんがあるだろうがよ。人間ならよ。誰だか知らねえが犯人は人間じゃねえぜ。血の色が赤いわけがねえ。
犯人は人間じゃない。鍵が選んだ生贄なだけ。
おい、 マリア、今、なんて言った？
Maria had just said something. But since the words were so remotely separated from the flow and context of the conversation, for a second I couldn't understand them. As I was about to ask her to repeat it, I was shocked by the sudden sound of Aunt Natsuhi's loud voice coming from the entrance to the parlor. It looked like Aunt Natsuhi and Auntie Ava had returned from their trip to see grandfather.
無線でも連絡できない？こんな時に使えなくて、何のための防災無線ですか？
申し訳ございません。毎年、保守点検はさせているはずなのですが。
ほら、光をチカチカさせるみたいな船舶信号ってあるじゃない？そういうので向こうの島に連絡することはできないのかしら？
そのような設備はございません。申し訳ございません。
Just then, Kumasawa came pushing a serving cart loaded with breakfast. Since there was no way we would be able to eat in the dining hall, Hideyoshi had ordered her to bring it to the parlor.
なぜ朝食をこちらに？
ああ、夏木さん、それは後で話す。それよりエヴァ、お父さんはどうなんや？
So we're not going to go back to Maria acting a little off?
ご一緒でないところを見ると、このような事態になっても、部屋から出ませんか？
いないわ。部屋は空っぽだったのよ。
なんやて？こんな時にどこ行ったんや？
親方様が、書斎を出られたというのですか？
そうです。私も驚いています。いつの間に部屋を出たのやら。あなたたちに心当たりはないのですか？
Natsuhi looked at Genji and Kanona as she said this. She probably thought that the servants permitted the one-winged eagle who served directly under him would know of a place he might go. However, it seemed to be the other way around. Their faces made it clear that those who knew Kinzo best realized even more than everyone else how impossible it was for him to leave his room.
僕たちにも、見当がつきません。
ご存知の通り、親方様はあの書斎の中に、お休みの場所からご不浄まで全てを設けさせました。親方様があの部屋をお出になることなど、よっぽどのことがない限り考えられません。
となると、なんや。そのよっぽどのことがあったって考えるのが自然だっちゅうことになるんか。
まだそうと決まったわけではありません。とにかく気まぐれな方ですから。現状をご存知なく、お一人で散歩をされている可能性もあります。仮にそうだとしたら、一刻も早く現状をお知らせして、ご指示を仰がねばなりません。
そうね。考えたくはないけど。お父様の身に何かあったのかもしれないしね。
そのような不吉なことは考えたくもありません。
No one had seen Kinzo since the 6 horrible corpses had been found. On top of that, the phones were broken, the radio wouldn't reach anyone, and there was no way to contact the police. It looked like the typhoon would leave tomorrow and a boat would come. But until then, no one could rely on anyone outside the island, nor could they escape the island. Everyone had lost their composure at the extremely sudden tragedy. A heavy silence and a sense of impatience. Even though they needed to do something, they couldn't think of anything. Some of them became irritated, while others merely held their heads in their hands. But not one of them could explain what was occurring on this island of Okenjima. After that, we sat in the parlor and wordlessly chewed through the breakfast that Kumasawa-san had made. Of course, this was right after something like that had happened. No one had any appetite. However, we realized that not eating would weaken our bodies. It would also be rude to Kumasawa-san who had made the breakfast. Kumasawa-san had taken the tasteful western vegetables ones that Goda-san had probably special ordered for the purpose of some extravagantly fancy dish and cooked them in a Japanese style, making them turn in an unpleasant color. As to what Goda-san had been planning to cook with those ingredients, right then I couldn't even imagine it. If I did think about it, I would be reminded of the way Goda-san had died, and the inside of my mouth would be filled with a sour taste. For the time being, everyone pretended to eat, but there was no hope of anyone making any headway into the meal. Then everyone brought up to speed on the current situation. First off, that Uncle Kraus, my dad, Kirie-san, Auntie Rosa, Goda-san, and Shannon-chan had been found in the Rose Garden storehouse as cruelly mutilated corpses. And that despite that, we were unable to use phones or radio and still couldn't contact the police. So until the typhoon passed, there was nothing we could do. Furthermore, grandfather, who we had hoped might be able to show a little leadership in this kind of situation, had disappeared at some point. Goda-san had made breakfast, so grandfather's stomach must have been empty. If he had just been taking a casual walk by now, he should have been stopping back to whine about how hungry he was. And yet, he hadn't appeared. There was more than a small chance that he had become caught up in the earlier crime. Aunt Natsuhi and Auntie Ava had said that on their return trip from going to see Kinzo, they had called out to him on every floor looking for him, but were not able to find him. If you think about the timing of it all, it was probably best to think that he had been caught up in the crime. If the culprit had taken the trouble to move the bodies of Dad and the rest, who we figured had been killed in the dining hall, all the way to the storehouse, then maybe they had already killed Grandfather, moved his body to some strange location, and we had simply not found it yet. No one actually said it, but this theory seemed extremely convincing. No one ever thought to suspect the grandfather either, right? Even though we know it's not necessarily him, because he was more than willing to sacrifice his family to Beatrice.
私たちはお屋敷の戸締まりを確認してきます。お父様も念入りに探さなければなりません。子供たちはこの部屋を出ないように。エヴァさんと秀吉さんは申し訳ありませんが、ここで子供たちと一緒にいてください。南條先生もお願いいたします。
わかりました。ここでお待ちしています。
Aunt Natsuhi led the servants, Genji-san, Kumasawa-san, and Kanon-kun, out of the parlor. All that was left was Auntie Ava, Uncle Hideyoshi, Dr. Nanjo, and the four of us children for a total of 7 people.
みんなで仲良くテレビでも見て待ってよな。しかし、日曜日の午前中はろくな番組やっとらへんな。
Uncle Hideyoshi tried to stir up this gloomy atmosphere, acting cheerfully.
ろくな番組見る。
お、そうか。マリアちゃんはテレビ見るか。じゃ、おじさんと一緒に見ような。
Maria was the only one who played along. Even though Maria had been told of her mother's death, she didn't show the slightest flicker in her emotions. Was Nine really this young in age? No one else was feeling the slightest bit like joining in, and they each sank into their sofas and let their minds go blank. Maybe it's also because Beatrice probably contacted Maria in some way, like she did before, when she possessed her.
兄貴、聞いていいか？
なんだい？
さっき倉庫で。兄貴は、シャノンちゃんの指輪の話をしたよな。あれ、送ったのは、兄貴か？
George Anarchy didn't answer, but he hung his head and closed both of his eyes. There could be no clearer response.
よせよ、パトラ。少しは察しろよ。
だな。悪いことを聞いたぜ。
そうさ。僕だよ。彼女に昨べ求婚したんだ。その時、指輪を渡した。明日になったら、それを好きな指にはめて返事としてくれって。気ざったらしいことを言ってね。
And that ring had been on the ring finger of Shannon Chan's left hand.
私さ、数年前からシャドウに相談を受けてたぜ。ジョージ兄さんのことでさ。
なんて言ってたのかな。
シャノンは嘘をつくのが下手だったからよ。ジョージ兄さんのことを言ってるのはすぐにバレバレでさ。自分は使用人の身分だけど親しくしてもいいのだろうかとか、男の人の好きそうなものは何かとか、どういう服を着たら喜ぶかとか、そんなことをいろいろとさ。 なんつうのか、まあ焼けたぜ。
それが婚約指輪を渡されて、そこでおしまいかよ。
価値観は人それぞれだけどよ、男から求婚されるってのはある意味人生の到達点なんだと思うんだよ。だからきっと昨夜のシャノンは心の底から、いや生まれてから今までの中で
George Aniki, without raising his head, sighed deeply. Or maybe tears had risen to his eyes.
シャノンは昨べゲストハウスの当番だったらしいんだ。でもシャノンは僕と一緒にゲストハウスに帰るのを恥ずかしがってお屋敷に行ってしまった。
シャノンの気持ちを察しろよ。婚約指輪をもらえばどんなに予告されてたって普通は舞い上がっちまって頭は真っ白になっちまうぜ。気恥ずかしくて仕方なかったんだろうよ。
それでシャノンは当番でないはずのお屋敷へ行き、事件に巻き込まれてしまった。僕があの日あの場所で指輪なんか渡さなければシャノンはサヨは事件に巻き込まれなかったんだ。
兄貴、それだけは違うぜ。断じて違う。だからそれ以上泣くんじゃね
え。バトラ君。
Alright guys, I'm gonna end the video here for today. Thank you all for watching. When we come back, we're gonna continue on and see what happens next. So thank you all for watching.